Hello and welcome to the world famous and award-winning Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I'm the traffic anchor and the transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Luber. If you would like to be on the show, you can contact me on any of the contact links. I would give you the call. Well, let me just do it anyway. So here's the listener hotline number, 303-832-0217. But here's the issue. I just checked the number. And what happens is it goes to like a generic voicemail answering message. And it is not me giving a message. So apparently on the switch between the old building and the new building, all of that got wiped out. And I have not answered or recorded a new one that I need to do post haste. So, knowing me and knowing me that I'll forget about this in the next 3 minutes, I'll probably not have it on there. Well, I need to write. I'm going to write myself a note right now. Do recording of voicemail. Okay, so that still probably won't work. But anyway, if you call it, it's not going to be my voice, but you can still leave me a message on that number. Okay. All of that said, I want to get to my guest today. I have touched on this in the past, the risks and dangers that connected vehicles have to you and me, but and to the other road users out there, because getting your robot vacuum hacked, that's one thing, but the implications of a hacked self-driving semi-truck or a fleet of vehicles could be devastating. I invited Joel Black. He's a vice president at Lockton Companies. They're said to be the world's largest independent insurance brokerage, to come on and talk about some of the security, cybersecurity issues, the side of safety and insurance, all of that together. It's really a concern that's growing as technology is moving forward. Joel, thanks so much for being here on the world famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate and thank you for having me on.
All right. So since it's winter time, and everywhere else north of you is pretty much stuck in winter. What's it like to be in Arizona right now? You can rub it in.
It's great. It's 80 degrees right now, and it's sunny, so it's a beautiful time to come out to Arizona.
There you go. Well, I want to first define a connected vehicle before we move on to how they can be compromised. So when we're talking about connected vehicles, what all is connected? I presume location, like there's a GPS, but what about how the vehicle has been driven or is being driven at that time, or the vehicle condition, like if the engine light is on or the tire lights are on, or dash cam video that is either just recorded or broadcast live?
Correct. So there are a couple of ways of defining a connected vehicle. So you have your typical, like your dash cameras that are connected, which if you look at these Amazon vehicles, they all have these connected dash cams. Identify your driving behavior, but then you also have tools that have these sensors, and these sensors communicate with third parties, but they also communicate with your internal vehicle, and it can give your what's called like an ADAS alert, where if your car gives you alerts for tailgating or driving too fast. So you have a lot of these different alerts that are very technologically advanced, more so than we've ever seen before.
So is the connection through integrated computers already installed in the vehicle, or does it need a specialized system, including some kind of wireless connection, to be already installed in the vehicle before we can know all of this stuff?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. So if you're talking about a big tractor trailer that has these ELDs that are required by federal law to monitor hours of service, these are systems that both have a SIM card that will transmit data through your phone network, but also they have they are directly hardwired into the vehicle's ECM. And then you also have like your personal vehicle, where there are Bluetooth as well as hardwired connections in these vehicles. So some of it is wireless, and the other piece of it, they are hardwired vehicles.
Yeah, so they're becoming more and more little telephones or laptops, if you will, as you're driving down the road.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. And for the data that these vehicles are getting, it's astonishing.
And I'm sure it could work both ways, but we all know there are times when our cell phone doesn't connect. Right? Is that too a concern maybe with these vehicles, especially when data needs to come into the vehicle and go out?
Sure, depending on the systems that are in those vehicles. Again, say for a ELD device, if you're losing connection, a big tractor trailer that has a GPS system, you don't have a cell phone signal. Uh, you're basically the company or the company that you're transporting the cargo for. They're not going to be able to spot where your cargo is, and they also have systems where they track GPS, where they put GPS systems in high value cargo. And if your cell phone signal isn't working, that can't transmit any data either.
Right, right. My guest is Joel Black. He's a vice president at Lockton Companies. We're talking about the transportation, risk management, and connected vehicles and fleets and that sort of thing. When the connection is good, it is prone to being hacked. And we hear that when we connect our phone or our laptop to a public Wi-Fi, like we're at the airport or we're in a coffee shop, that we can get hacked. But how realistic it really is that? I ask that because it's possible, but is it probable? Is it the same probability with a connected vehicle? It's possible to get hack into a connected vehicle or a fleet, but how probable is it?
There are already stories about these Tesla vehicles being hacked into, but there are outside of the United States and possibly even internally in the United States, it's people's jobs at the end of the day to try to hack into different systems. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're already trying to do it. And unfortunately, in today's world, it's really not if, it's when these systems are going to get hacked. And because we really haven't touched on that, or it really hasn't been impacted yet in that area. It's not really publicized yet, but I think when you start having these issues is when things are going to start changing in the automotive industry.
So you're really warning that it's not a if, it's a when. So when a hacker does decide to get into my car or into a fleet or whatever, what are they hoping to accomplish when they hack into my vehicle?
It all comes down to money. So what they want is they will hold uh, basically your company hostage until they get money. And we see it day in and day out. And unfortunately, just recently, you heard, and I don't necessarily want to bring it up, but you have United Healthcare CEO, but United Healthcare system was breached, and where pharmacists all around the country couldn't dispense uh, uh, their pills and pharmaceuticals because United Healthcare system was down, and they're one of the largest healthcare agencies in the country. So it's pretty serious.
Yeah, sounds like it. So somebody wouldn't want to just hack into a fleet of vehicles or into a semi truck and then take over the driving ability of it, or just stop it on the middle of a highway, or let's say stop it in a tunnel, stop it on a bridge, so you make commerce come to a stop. You somehow flip it over so it lands into a shopping area where there are a lot of people gathered.
I would think that that could be the realm of possibility, and I would hope it would never come to that point. But typically, what you see right now is they individuals that will try to break into these systems. They do it for money, not necessarily to physically harm individuals or a group of people, but it's strictly about money.
Yeah, well, we thought that about 9/11 as well.
Well, correct. And you always have that one person, unfortunately,
Yeah.
or that group of people.
But in my phone, and I don't know how good it works, but Verizon or AT&T, whoever, and in my instance, I have an iPhone and I have an Android, a Samsung phone. But they say that they have some antivirus software, that sort of thing, or hacking software. I have it on my laptops and my home desktop. Is that something that is also available for a connected vehicle, whether it's your Tesla or your fleet?
Well, there are firewalls and there are different security measures so that way it doesn't happen. But again, there are people that are paid specifically to try to break into these systems. So again, it's as technology advances, there's going to need to be more safety nets put in into these vehicles to make sure that they don't get hacked, and even the systems for a lot of these vehicles. And I'll give you a great example. You have John Deere, where a lot of John Deere equipment can only be accessed and can be accessed remotely through only John Deere approved facilities. And it's a big deal because only John Deere authorized mechanics or the dealers can get access to it. But these companies are working remotely to get into the vehicle. So if you think that it just has to be one vehicle related, it can be an actual vehicle manufacturer that, if their system is breached, can possibly bring down all of the vehicles because they're all connected.
Interesting. Yeah, I've actually had a similar issue. So I have an older car. It's a 2014 Chevrolet, and it does have some software updates that it could get into the car. But the dealership, the General Motors dealership, is the only one, they say, that can get that software, and they put it on a flash drive, and then they plug it into the car, and then they, update everything. And they won't give that software to me so I can do it, because their mechanics are charging $100+ an hour, and so they just sit there for a couple hours while the computer is updating. But I'm getting charged $400 or $500 or $600 for an update that I could probably do myself.
Exactly, and there are some federal regulations that they're trying to push because of that issue in and of itself, where is it better for you to protect your own vehicle so that way we don't have these issues, or do we have to rely on a big manufacturer like John Deere or Chevrolet to do that for us?
Right. My guest is Joel Black. He's a vice president at Lockton Company. We're talking about transportation, risk management, and connected vehicles. And knowing that there are more dangers to vehicles and fleets other than just a sleepy or unattended driver crashing into something, what are the insurance complications now when you're trying to insure a fleet or somebody who is a owner operator of a semi, because they can be hacked? I mean, are you building all of that into these insurance issues?
So there is cyber insurance, and there are some insurance companies that are trying to develop some cyber insurance policies specifically for the trucking industry. So that way, if for whatever reason your vehicle does get hacked, there would be some type of cyber insurance policy to possibly pay out any type of ransom that there might be. But when you look at the overall basic auto insurance policy, where if a vehicle would hit a third party, you would get your basic coverage for bodily injury or property damage. If there is damage as a result from what happened, what caused that vehicle to damage a third party, that's a basic insurance policy. But for the actual breach or a cyber event, that's typically not covered under a standard insurance policy. It's usually under a cyber policy. But again, we're getting into a new era right now where we're getting into a new era where it really comes down to there are not a lot of insurance companies that are doing this, and the reason why is because it really hasn't happened. So the more this happens, the insurance companies will figure out different products and services to offer their clients.
Yeah, but what has happened are conflicts between autonomous vehicles and human-driven vehicles, because some people say that autonomous vehicles have the potential safety benefits by eliminating a driver, because humans are, they're flawed, right? And so humans can do human things, and they're prone to error and misbehavior. But Tesla believes they are the leader in this field, and Waymo believes they are the leader, but they have some challenges with their test cars. General Motors Cruise is, getting out of the whole space now, at least for now. But the risks of of let's say, an autonomous vehicle, and even hacking an autonomous vehicle, which is somewhat separate, it seems, and the cost to insure these vehicles has to be something of a challenge to deal with now.
Well, I think it will continue to remain a challenge. And as I tell people, when you look at the autonomous vehicle situation, is I think we'll eventually get there. It will be incorporated into to safety features in the next several decades. But when you look at airlines, right, is that even a lot of these airplanes can fly themselves, but they're still getting into accidents, and so we still have pilots in there. I think you'll still see the same thing where you'll still see truck drivers in those vehicles. They just won't be as actively involved in driving the vehicle because of a lot of this technology that they are developing. But we are right now kind of a rocky road where you do have companies like Too Simple that just exited the U.S. market, and they're going to remain in, I think, China. But you do have Waymo, you do have Kodiak, you do have a couple of these other program or companies out there that are developing the software for being autonomous, and it's going to be a concern. And I do know there are insurance companies looking at these concerns. It's just the issues haven't happened yet.
Well, well, you were mentioning that airplanes, and we saw this with Boeing, where they had some software failures, even with pilots in the cabin. They couldn't override some of the software failures, and it caused a catastrophic, a crash, killing everybody on board. But some of these autonomous vehicles, and Tesla is famous for this now, where they, in the last few months, have tested and shown that they've been able to drive hundreds of miles without human intervention. And so they are working as quickly as they can to have nobody in the driver's seat. They even demoed a car that when you sit in it, all you see is it's larger than an iPad screen. It would be a pretty large home desktop screen, but just the screen. And there's no steering wheel, no gas pedal, no brake pedal, no gear shift, nothing like that. It's just you get in, and it's like you're on a ride at Disneyland where there's just a screen in the middle there, and it's driving you around.
And I think that's what we're going to get. So it will be kind of what the Jetsons, right? Where the things are just going to be flying you around. And I think that's where we're going to get. But it's going to take, I think, still years and a lot of political backing in order for that to occur, because there's going to be some opposite forces where you're going to have a lot of groups that don't want this to happen.
Yeah. But knowing insurance the way you do, when we see more of these autonomous vehicles on the road, who's going to be responsible in these crashes? The car maker, the software developer, the municipality where the connected vehicle technology was connected to the vehicle, the owner of the car who might not even have been driving. You have to figure out, all of this has to be sorted out in a liability case, because somebody could be hurt or even worse, killed.
That's a great question. A great point is that there will need to be new laws created to figure out who's going to be responsible for what, because as you know, in our litigious world that we are in today, in these nuclear judgments, any type of plaintiff attorney is going to go after anyone and everyone they can get their hands on that might have a dollar to pay out in some type of lawsuit, no matter if it was a minor or a major accident. So there is a lot of work ahead of us. And again, usually it seems as if a lot of us will react to issues rather than kind of be on the offensive. So again, unfortunately, I think it's going to take a couple of issues in order for regulations. Not necessarily a lot of people want regulations, but there will need to be some regulations put in place to limit liability for these companies. Otherwise, no one's going to do it.
Yeah, because we saw what happened in that example with Boeing and their max airplanes where the
Correct.
software was blamed partially for the plane to crash, right, and killing all those people. So that's the software issue, and then it nearly destroyed Boeing. They really haven't quite recovered just yet. They've had other issues too, but they haven't quite recovered. So when you're talking about a fleet of vehicles, whether it's Teslas or if, because I know Elon wants to have a fleet of self-driving taxis out there, and Waymo's going for this too. They could have a fleet that might be, let's say, hacked, and then the hacker doesn't necessarily just want money. They want to cause chaos, stop all the cars in San Francisco where nobody can get anywhere, or maybe crash some into other regular people. So, I mean, how do you deal with something that is that futuristic and that's complicated?
That's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of organization, because the U.S. Department of Transportation, which is overseeing a lot of these autonomous vehicles and their different classes and categories of autonomous vehicles, is that they are wanting to expand it, and it's on their priority list. But to be honest, I don't think either from a local government to the federal government, to the Department of Transportation, if they have thought that far ahead, where what happens if, and now using Tesla, because Tesla's trying to make tractor trailers, and they are, is what happens if you could do something bad with these vehicles in New York City or San Francisco. That's quite problematic. And the problem is, right now, it's just you have to abide by certain Department of Transportation regulations, and if you do that, you're in compliance. And I don't think that they've thought that far ahead. In Arizona with Waymo, and when Too Simple was in the United States, they were primarily just operating on the interstates, and a driver had to take over in city. So are they going to try to do those types of recommendations so that way there's more control?
Yeah, I've heard that too, where you would have just semis going from hub to hub, from Kansas City to Denver to Albuquerque, over to Phoenix where you are, that sort of thing, where they just go hub to hub, and then you have a local delivery, then sends it out, but you have the autonomous between those points.
Exactly. And I mean, even with a lot of the safety that's in these vehicles today, where we have these automatic braking and you get the alerts for the lane shifting, up until this year, fatalities were still increasing. And if you think about it, if we're having all these safety devices in these vehicles as well, why are these fatalities still increasing with, as it relates to per 100 miles that you drive? So there are still some safety issues out there, even with all this connected technology in the vehicles. That's supposed to make us safer.
Right. Well, that's supposed to make us safer, but then we drive because we feel safer in the vehicle. And so it's a lot different if you've ever driven in a 1970s, let's say, Oldsmobile, you don't feel quite as safe because the car doesn't handle as well as a newer model anything. I mean, they feel almost like race cars, where you can be going 80 miles an hour, 85, and you feel still very comfortable, not like you're even going that fast.
Right. Well, a 1970s Oldsmobile, though, is pretty much built like a tank, though,
Yeah, right.
compared to a lot of the cars today. And I mean, between the sensors in a lot of these vehicles too, is that if these vehicles are damaged, it's not a simple fix anymore. Or even like your windshield, where before you could replace your windshield for maybe a couple $100. Now today, with the sensors that are in your windshields from that identify, again, like the tailgating or the lane drifting, it costs about $1,000, if not more, just to get a new windshield.
Yeah. My guest is Joel Black, Vice President at Lockton Companies. They are said to be the world's largest independent insurance brokerage. We're talking about transportation risks of fleets and other management. But doesn't all this then maybe lead to it's interesting that you say everything is safer. It costs more to get a car fixed. I've heard stories of some of the electric cars like the Rivian where the whole back end, if you just dent the back end, the whole thing has to be replaced. So it's not just like you're replacing just the one bumper. You're replacing the entire backside of the car. So that would lead then to higher insurance rates when, like you said, we're supposed to be getting safer and have autonomous vehicles and keep us all safe.
Well, and you're seeing that with probably anyone, including my own personal insurance, and as well as commercial vehicles. Everyone's insurance rates are going up. One, because of litigation from liability, but also two, the cost of your vehicles have gone up drastically. I mean, my wife drives a Honda Odyssey van. I mean, those have gone up in the past 4 or 5 years. Everything is just more expensive. And including when we were during COVID, where usually you have used vehicles that depreciate, they're actually appreciating. And those vehicles are getting into accidents and it costs a lot more. And again, insurance is typically reactive and they won't start raising rates until these claims start coming in. So there's usually a 1 or 2 year lag before anything happens.
And people were driving less because so many people were staying at home.
Exactly. But and ironically, there are still more fatalities on the road.
Yeah.
So did they think that they're being safer when they actually weren't?
Yeah, you
The
never
problems
know.
that there, and it's a very interesting world that we live in today.
Yeah, because you think about that with a DUI. So let's say I get in one of the self-driving cars and I'm hammered. Am I driving the car? Or is the car driving the car? Can I be pulled over for DUI?
So I have a brother and my dad are both criminal defense attorneys, and I would probably say that given, well, at least the Arizona laws, if you're behind the wheel in Arizona and you're driving that vehicle, you are going to be given a citation.
But what if there's no wheel?
Good point. I think that comes back with state regulations where if they say if you're that or in a driver's seat and you're drunk, what do you do? Or even with these Waymo vehicles, if and I don't know if you can sit in the driver's seat with these driverless Waymo vehicles, especially here in Arizona, and if you're intoxicated and you get pulled over, would you get a DUI?
Yeah. Or the car gets into a crash of sorts. Maybe the car didn't see that pothole and the tire blows out and the cop is there to help you, but you're hammered in the back seat. So, yeah, something like that where, let's say the car was driving fine, but then all of a sudden, some kind of a situation arises where then you're with law enforcement and who's driving?
Right. It actually brings up a great legal question.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen, since you're there in Arizona, have you seen some of these cars? Have you been in one of these cars?
So I have not been in the Waymo self-driving vehicles, or it's Waymo and Uber, but I do see the tractor trailers, the autonomous tractor trailers on I-10 between Tucson and Phoenix.
Oh, neat. And they just look like a regular semi-truck, right?
They look like regular semi-trucks, but they have a variety of different sensors on the vehicles. So you can tell that there's something a little bit different with them, but they are interesting and very expensive pieces of technology that are driving down the road.
Yeah. And part of that technology that's developing very quickly is artificial intelligence. So do you think that the introduction of this modern technology like AI or other technological changes in an operation could create or maybe prevent risks that were not contemplated when these original insurance policies were purchased? It must make it really tough to figure out insurance from year to year, or maybe even now month to month.
Yeah, and that's going to take time. My personal opinion, because I do a lot with technology, especially in commercial vehicles, and there are dash cameras that you can place in your vehicles that are connected, and there are third-party companies that have AI and machine learning capabilities that if you're dozing off or you're on your cell phone, they can actually identify those behaviors or running a stop sign So that way you can get alerted, or the camera alerts you of those issues. So that way your behavior changes immediately. But like nurses too, where they hear a lot of beeps and the alarms, you get these alarm fatigue where it goes in one ear and out the other. So it works on some cases, but on other cases, uh, there still needs to be some additional development.
Yeah, because it reminds me, I talked to this trucking company here in Metro Denver. They have a podcast, and I was on their podcast, and I was doing some interviews with them. But they have a fleet of trucks, and they all have dash cams in their trucks. Now, they have a dedicated person. I don't know if they're connected to to watch them live, but I know they have a dedicated person to go back and look at those videos and either make recommendations to the drivers of how they could do better or how they did on their drive, and then also look at the aftermath of an incident if there was one by using that camera. It seems like that is something that AI could do either in real time or after a drive, and maybe even do it more efficiently.
Exactly. No, and usually those cameras you can see them live too if something is going on. But the goal is to improve safety. There are trucking companies and companies that will install these cameras, and they're expensive. Uh, but if you're not involved in your drivers and your fleets to really help those drivers understand what occurred, typically what you see is when you install these cameras, because they know that they're being watched initially, their driving behavior improves. But then if no one does anything, then their driver behavior goes back to normal. So what's the point of investing in a technology that you're not going to use?
Yeah, right, right. But couldn't AI also be helping in not only helping making drivers better or seeing how they're doing, but also help with calculating the risk of maybe a particular fleet or group of drivers and set the insurance rates based on that data?
They currently do that right now, where the insurance companies uh, they collectively use industry data about accidents and the types of vehicles, and that's why you see different rates even for your personal vehicles. For say, even though a Porsche might be more expensive, or say like a Toyota van versus a Honda van, the rates might be a little bit different based upon historical numbers, accidents, who's driving it, and even the territories. So there are different rates where a lot of the AI or machine learning, I should say, is also are there areas that you can avoid when there are potential accidents or weather patterns that come in. So that way, if these variables are about to happen, you can avoid being in the certain area. So I think that's kind of where we're going to start seeing a lot of the insurance and machine learning is how can you avoid an issue versus going into one based upon a lot of the data and historical analysis that's out there
Yeah,
today.
I talked to somebody a few episodes back that does that exact same thing. They use AI to help with, they try to, at least in real time, to help with routing of their fleets to get them away from incidents, because that would then lower the risk, and you would think that would lower their insurance risk as well. But I would also think that the food and beverage fleets would, their reliance on, they have to have tight delivery schedules because they have perishable food. I mean, with them. So whether it's refrigerated freight or whatever, but they would be, I would think, particularly vulnerable to disruptions.
That, and also what's a big issue right now is freight theft and fraud going on. Where I just read yesterday that there was $1 million worth of tequila stolen while it was going through the border from Mexico into the U.S. And so a lot of these issues too could possibly be avoided. I mean, I have a client that had about $500,000 worth of e-bikes stolen,
Wow.
And it's trying to track and understand those issues before they arise.
But wouldn't there be I mean, everybody has those Apple AirTags, right? I mean, why can't you have that on your fleets? Or I mean, you have the GPS on the fleets, but why can't you have that on your product too? And maybe that helps, lower your risk.
Some do and some don't. So you would think for how cheap some of these things are, and those are recommendations that we give out to our clients is doing the AirTags or small GPS systems with the cellular devices that can track the locations.
Yeah, right. My guest is Joel Black. He's a vice president at Lockton Companies. We're talking about transportation fleets and risks and risk management. I think you touched on it briefly, but is there any government oversight in any of this? Is it really being left up to the private sector right now?
Uh, just because this is a very new and kind of it's at its infancy, there's not a significant amount of regulation, but the U.S. Department of Transportation they do have regulations that they want a lot of the autonomous vehicles to have, but for the most part, it's very limited. But one of the Department of Transportation's bigger strategies for the upcoming year, but this was during the Biden administration, to invest more and to have a heavier push in technology-related transportation systems.
How do you think any of that's going to change with the incoming administration?
I actually think it might get better as Elon Musk likes is for efficiency. So I actually think with him being in there, it could make our transportation system more efficient and more safer. So I'm an optimist about that, but I do think that there could be some benefit to that.
It's really going to be interesting to see how if he is involved in the transportation side of things, because he's already involved in transportation with obviously his cars, obviously with his space stuff too, and because he's trying to clear get more airspace for more rockets and that sort of thing, and he's trying to work that out. But also, if he's involved in working on all this stuff with autonomous vehicles and getting self-driving vehicles and getting that technology out there, it seems like maybe he can be that motor to push it a little bit farther.
I could see that, and I could see people being afraid of him where they're going to do what he says, and the FAA and for the autonomous vehicles, it comes under the Federal Highway Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and where Elon Musk has gotten in trouble with SpaceX is under the FAA, which is still under the U.S. Department of Transportation and also the EPA for all of the environmental impacts for the space launches.
Right. Yeah, because that last one that went that was a big rocket. It I remember one of the other ones he tested. It pretty much destroyed the whole pad.
It's the I forget what it's called. Anyway, but yeah, it's and I think he's going to lift off another one here in the next couple of weeks too.
Right. You look at this technology all the time. I mean, like you said, you can look out your window and see this technology. What's your outlook to the future of these autonomous deliveries, these semi trucks, these autonomous fleets? What do you expect to see them look like in the future, and when do you think they might be mainstream?
I would probably give it another decade, and then it will be more mainstream. But there's going to be a lot of different variety with autonomous vehicles. I can see it being you see on universities today are these little robots that go out and make deliveries on university campuses. So you have these autonomous little delivery robot vehicles that go make the local deliveries to tractor trailers that are out there on the road, and especially for the safety. And I look at it from a litigation point of view as well. There's a significant amount of nuclear judgments against trucking companies that at the end of the day impacts the consumer just like you and me, because if there's an increased risk because of lawsuit, well, that transportation cost gets passed down to you and me with the products that we buy. So the more this can get out there and the quicker the better, because to be honest, it'll make products cheaper for us, even though that we don't see it today. But I have a feeling you're going to see a lot more of this in 10 years. And I think with Trump also being in, not picking sides on Republican or Democrat, but I also think that there's going to be more innovation, more money out there for companies to get started and to come up with different ideas and scale them.
Yeah. Well, transportation companies are already spending millions and millions of dollars on this technology and on insurance, and they want to get that money back.
Well, exactly, and they still get into lawsuits, and they're no matter what you do, in some cases, especially what they call judicial hellholes, that if you operate in a certain, or if you operate or go through a certain county and you get sued, you know that there's going to be a big judgment just because the laws are against a trucking company. So as much as they install these cameras and the technology, and they spend millions and millions of dollars, unfortunately, because of the our litigious environment, they're going to get sued no matter what, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, maybe this is the time to look at some tort reform, and I'm sure it's there in Arizona. It is here in Colorado. It's really across the country where you see the strong arm, or you see the injury lawyers, and they're the ones that are keeping television stations in business right now because they spend so much money on advertising, which is helping me out because it's keeping me employed, right? But it also makes all of us our auto insurance and fleet insurance a lot more.
Exactly, and that's the thing. You look at tort, and there are certain states, and there are some insurance carriers that just won't operate in those states or in certain areas because they just know historically, if they get involved in a lawsuit, it's going to be expensive, and it's just not worth their time or their effort.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's I guess the way it is. What we need is the Hyperloop, and then it will solve everybody's problem.
Exactly. I don't even know what's going on with that, but yeah, if you could do that and buy a Tesla, hey, as I say, work or just take a train.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or if Elon maybe gets really more involved with the government, he's going to have tunnels everywhere. It'll just be a series of tunnels.
Exactly. Hey, you never know. You never know. Yeah. I think it's going to be a good time for innovation, though, here in the next several years.
Hey, Joel, if people wanted to get some more information, maybe from you or from Lockton, how can they do that?
Sure. They can reach out to me. My phone number is 520-982-2221, or they can go to lockton.com. And we have a lot of information about what we do, including cyber and transportation. And they can feel free to reach out.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll post all that as well in the description of this show so people can find that information easily. Joel, thank you so much for your insight and your information. I thought it's been a fascinating conversation.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And again, I have all of the contact information there for Joel in the description of this show, so you can find it right there, so you don't have to listen with a piece of paper and a pen and just jot it all down as quickly as you can. But it's interesting when I ask people that are in this insurance space and cybersecurity stuff, when I ask them the questions about the future of autonomous vehicles and how we mix those with human vehicles and who's responsible in a crash, a car maker, software developer, all that stuff, the municipality, how does insurance work with that? And everybody is basically saying, we're not sure. We don't know yet. We're not sure how that's going to work. It's all kind of up in the air between government and insurance and cities and companies and software makers and all of it. So it's going to be, I think, a problem that will have to be solved in the future, but the future is coming up pretty quickly, as we've all seen with what AI can do now. It's remarkable. I was watching something where somebody had they do this AI stuff, where somebody basically did a whole cartoon show, like an animated short, in the time that it would take them. It did it basically in a week, when it would take a regular developer months and months and months to do it. And it's remarkable how it all is just beautiful. It looks great. They actually now have some AI news anchors. And what you do is you just type in what you want them to say, right? And then you have these AI people that is all generated, all computer generated. You can make them look whatever you want or sound however you want. It's not perfect yet, but it is really close. There's a few glitches where you can see that it's an AI person talking back at you, but it's really close. And so, in the next year or two, are we going to have news anchors? Are we going to have drive? I mean, what's the AI stuff going to do to driving and insurance and fleets and all of this stuff? It's pretty fascinating stuff to watch. So anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm Jason Luber, the traffic guy. Be safe. And as always, happy motoring.